Thank you for joining us for the 2-minute drills. I'm Aram Salegian, joined on my left by Steve Ramirez. Behind the camera, Fred J. Robledo. A special time every fall is when San Dimas and Bonita get together and play for the Smudge spot. That's exactly what's going to take place on Friday night at Citrus College. Bonita undefeated at 3-0. San Dimas 2-1. Let's get right into this. I mean, this is one of the bigger rivalries in the area. Always brings out a good crowd. Tons of intensity. Two nearby schools.
And the first time in a while, this isn't the game that kicks off the year. You know, this had been the week 0 game. I think the past 3 years, Aram, and this is the first time it's kind of in the middle of the season, or
I think last year was in the middle
right
of the
before
season.
league. Was it last year?
I think so.
Okay, I thought it was the season kickoff last year too.
Thank God for the internet.
Yeah, not that important, but you're looking at the two helmets. We have them squaring off this week, and Bonita, you know, they've kind of owned the series the last 2 years. They've taken the last two. Steve, what do you think? Bigger game for Bonita or San Dimas?
Well, I'm sure Bonita wants to keep it rolling. They've kind of been, at least the first week, were kind of a surprise, but since we saw what they've had, you know, they've really been a pretty good football team. I would say kind of San Dimas, you know, coming off their loss a couple weeks ago to Diamond Bar, they did bounce back against Rosemead, but this is obviously a different animal that they have in Bonita they're facing. They're going to be up against it this week.
Yeah, Aaron, I mean, what do you think? I mean, the last few years I've watched this game, even when San Dimas won, when Coach Z was here a few years ago, they always seemed like they were undersized against Bonita, and that seems like the last couple of years that's even been more evident. I mean, Bonita's been able to just kind of physically impose their will and kind of run through them. At least that's what I've noticed the last couple games. And is that going to get any easier for San Dimas?
That stands to reason because Bonita's the bigger school. Yeah. They play in the higher division. And going back to what we talked about earlier, last year's game was in early October.
Okay.
So that'll let you know this thing's in the middle of the season now. It looks for a while. You know, to further answer your question, Freddie, you know, I just think also another big reason why Bonita has started to, you know, look good, or this was always difficult for San Dimas, was when it was all those years, the first game of the season, you had Bonita's coaches and defense coordinator Ray Medina having the whole offseason, the whole summer to gear up for Z's special offense. You know, you fast forward to that when it's in the regular season and you only have a week to prepare, or, you know, 3-4 days of a week to prepare. It's a lot different. So you have a better idea of what's coming. Now, obviously, that didn't hurt Bonita at all last year, but these two teams play every year, and, you know, you start to get used to what you're going to see and when you're going to see it. And I think that dynamic is still somewhat in play, even though Zernico's gone and now Holman's in, and you wonder, you know, is it going to be exactly the same? At any rate, until San Dimas, you know, proves against good teams that this offense or its offense or whatever Holman's running, you know, whether it's a variation of what Z ran, until they prove that it can score against top-notch teams, I'm going to be skeptical. Now, they looked great last week against Rosemead. But
Rosemead hasn't won a game yet.
Yeah, Rosemead's played a tough non-league schedule, but you know, Bonita's a different animal because physically they're up for this. So we're gonna see. I mean, this is gonna say a lot about San Dimas right here.
Yeah, I mean, I look at that. Look at the teams they've played, and the one game that stands out was Bonita being able to go to Monrovia and get that victory, which is far and away the biggest victory that any of these two teams have had. San Dimas, great against Maranatha, great against Rosemead, just absolutely pounded them. But they lose 18-7 to Diamond Bar, and I think in that game, you have it there, Aram. They lost their starting quarterback, and they've had a new quarterback. The past two games, do you have his name in front of you?
Tamayo was the new QB.
Tamayo's
the
new
old one
QB.
was Guerrero.
Yeah, and
they
losing,
kind of look interchangeable, at least on stats.
At least on stats, but you know, Guerrero started the season. There was a reason that he was a starting quarterback. I mean, the fact is, they've got their backup quarterback in a big game against Bonita, and Bonita hasn't just won games. They've been, you know, except for the Monrovia game, which you can call that an upset. They've blown out the other teams they're supposed to blow out. I've just got a different sense for them this year that they're really going to be a contender once they get in the league. And I find it hard to believe that San Dimas is going to be in this game or even make it a close game. I can see this game getting ugly.
Well,
Aram,
please,
I really can.
Freddie, let's not forget this Bonita team was an at-large berth into the playoffs last year in the Central Division and went all the way to the semifinals before they lost to Los Altos. They're no joke. I mean, and they got their quarterback back from that team. They've got, several other guys back from that team. They lost some key guys, but still, I mean, that QB, Tanner East, these Bonita fans really believe that when we start talking about Matt Fink and Cam Brown and Carson Glazier, at San Marino, that we should be mentioning Tanner East in the same sentence. And so far he's done nothing to make anyone argue with that.
And like Fred was talking about the size advantage that Bonita has, even Coach Z told me a few years ago, I mean, their offense is a deceptive type of offense, but when you just can't block those guys, when they're just too dominating, it kind of blows up that offense. And that's kind of what's happened the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Right. Let's get into predictions here, guys. You have a Bonita team that may have the edge at the line of scrimmage. You have a Bonita team that may have the edge at quarterback, because they do have Tanner East, 9 touchdowns to 2 interceptions this year. You put those two things together and they're playing pretty good defense, and you start to wonder, like Fred was saying, is this thing going to turn ugly? I got to think Bonita, maybe momentum, or maybe the emotions of the event keep San Dimas in it for a half, but I got to think Bonita starts really putting this thing away in the second half.
Bonita's defense is... Go ahead, Steve, and I'll finish.
Well, either one, right?
Yeah, I mean, I have to go with Bonita, and basically the reasoning, the things that we've talked about. Bonita's size advantage. Their quarterback is playing really well. They're playing really well. And I just can't see San Dimas keeping up with that. It's a rivalry game, so you put, like you said, you play on emotion, but that'll only carry you so far.
Yeah, and San Dimas, to me, has got to get off to a good start. They cannot, the way their offense runs, play catch-up being down 14 or 21 points. They've got to make this a game early. I just don't see how it's going to happen. Again, when you look at some of the scores, Bonita was able to do very well defensively against Monrovia. You look at San Dimas against Diamond Bar, only putting up 7 points against that defense. And Bonita's defense has been stingy this year in the games. The games outside of Monrovia, they've blown out. I think they've had a shutout, and they've held teams to single digits. I just like Bonita in this game, and I know it's a rivalry, and there's a lot of emotions, but I can see them getting on top of San Dimas early and then just stepping on the gas and making this a rout. I'm calling this at least a 21-point victory for Bonita.
Well, there you go. Freddie thinks this one could get ugly. I got Bonita pulling away. Stevie's got Bonita as well. Smudge pot, ladies and gentlemen. I don't need to say much more than that. Should be very fun. Citrus College on Friday night. See you out there.